The galaxy thought humanity was extinct. They thought our technology was primitive junk. So when an alien Inquisitor boarded the SS Rusty Nail, he didn't draw a weapon. He fell to his knees and worshipped the shipping container. Because in a galaxy of fragile energy shields, a 20-ton block of steel isn't just cargo. It's a god-tier projectile. Chapter 1. The Cold Start. The SS Rusty Nail shouldn't have survived. 4 centuries adrift in the void, life support running on fumes, quantum processors degraded to silicon dust. But we didn't need quantum processors. We needed the kind of engineering that doesn't quit because it's too dumb to know it's supposed to fail. The computer died first, back in 2247, its delicate neural networks corroded by cosmic radiation. But the life support wasn't controlled by computers. It was hydraulic, analog, built by the lowest government bidder with one specification: outlast the warranty by 300 years. When the reactor's power dropped below critical threshold, a mechanical deadman's switch triggered. No software, no fancy diagnostics, just a weighted lever and a spring-loaded relay. The cryopods cracked open not because of AI calculations, but because gravity and physics don't need updates. Captain Miller's first breath tasted like recycled sweat and machine oil. The hull was intact because it was over-engineered steel, not some exotic alloy that sublimated under stress. We survived because our ship was built like a diesel engine, ugly, heavy, and immortal. The galaxy forgot that redundancy isn't a backup plan. It's the only plan. Chapter 2. The Relic. The boarding party didn't come with weapons drawn. They came with incense. Captain Miller watched through the airlock camera as 6 robed figures drifted toward the Rusty Nail, their movements reverent, deliberate. Not the approach of pirates or salvagers, pilgrims. The lead alien's translator crackled to life, but the words made no sense. Forgive us, ancient ones. We seek only to witness the sacred geometries. Miller exchanged glances with Chief Engineer Vance. They'd expected hostility, maybe curiosity, not worship. The aliens entered the cargo bay and immediately prostrated themselves before a stack of ISO standard shipping containers. 20-foot steel boxes, rusted at the corners, stenciled with faded logos from corporations that no longer existed. One alien reached out with a trembling appendage, touching the corrugated surface like it was the face of a saint. "The divine coating," it whispered. "Proof against the void's curse." Vance leaned toward Miller. "They think the rust-proof paint is magic." Miller realized with creeping horror what he was seeing. These aliens had never seen standardization. Every container was identical. 8 feet wide, 8.5 feet tall, exactly 20 feet long, stackable, modular, interchangeable across every ship, crane, and chassis humanity ever built. To the aliens, this wasn't engineering. It was a miracle of divine uniformity. The galaxy had forgotten mass production, and we'd become their cargo cult. Chapter 3. The Standardization Paradox. Captain Miller spent 3 hours in the Pilgrim ship's engine room and wanted to scream. Not because it was broken, because it was impossible to fix. Every component was unique, handcrafted, impossibly precise. The fuel injectors were grown crystal, calibrated to quantum frequencies that required the original artisan to tune. The power couplings were each slightly different sizes, keyed to their specific ports like snowflakes. Beautiful, elegant, and completely unrepairable. Chief Vance held up a stripped bolt, its threads worn smooth. "They don't have replacements," she said flatly. The Pilgrim engineer gestured apologetically. "Each fastener is blessed by its maker. When it fails, we must return to the homeworld for a new one." Miller stared. "That's a 6-month round trip." "Yes, we have 17 ships waiting in queue." The galaxy had optimized for performance and forgotten about maintenance. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their shields nearly impenetrable. But when something broke, it stayed broken. Vance pulled a standard metric bolt from her toolkit. M8 by 1.25 thread pitch, exactly like 10 billion others made in the last 400 years. She walked to a junction box on the Pilgrim ship, removed a failed custom fastener, and threaded in the human bolt. It fit, not perfectly, but functionally. The Pilgrim engineer fell to his knees. "The sacred thread," he whispered. It accepts all vessels. Miller finally understood. Humanity hadn't been primitive. We'd been practical. And practicality was the one technology they'd lost.
Chapter 4. The High Priest of Maintenance. The airlock was jammed. Not stuck, not misaligned, just jammed with 400 years of microscopic debris welded into the track by thermal cycling. Chief Engineer Vance stared at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she grabbed a sledgehammer. The pilgrims watched in horror as she wound up and struck the frame with a sound like a church bell. Once, twice, 3 times. The airlock shuddered, groaned, and slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Vance wiped her hands on her coveralls and walked away. Behind her, 12 aliens dropped to their knees. The rite of percussive revelation, one whispered, another began chanting in a language that predated their translator software. By the time Vance returned with a wrench to adjust the alignment bolts, they'd built a shrine. Captain Miller found her an hour later, surrounded by pilgraphic recordings. "They think you resurrected a divine artifact," he said. Vance tightened the last bolt. "I hit it with a hammer. They're calling it the resurrection ceremony. You're now the High Priest of Maintenance." She looked at the growing crowd of aliens, each one recording her every movement like scripture. One held up a standard crescent wrench like it was the Holy Grail. "Does it fit all sizes of blessed fasteners, keeper of tools?" Vance picked it up, demonstrated the adjustable jaw, and watched their minds collectively explode. A tool that adapts to the problem instead of requiring a specific blessed instrument. Miller leaned in close. "We need to be careful. They're not just impressed, they're dependent." Vance nodded slowly. In a galaxy that forgot how to fix things, the person with a toolbox wasn't just useful. She was a god.
Chapter 5. The Inquisition. The warning came from a pilgrim scout ship, its crew panicked and praying. "The purifiers are coming! May the Ancient Ones forgive us for leading them to you!" Captain Miller pulled up the sensor data and felt his stomach drop. 17 warships, sleek and crystalline, moving in perfect formation. Not pilgrims, purifiers. The Inquisition. Their message arrived 3 minutes later, not a hail, but a proclamation broadcast on all frequencies. "False idols detected. Living flesh desecrates the sacred machines. Cleansing protocol initiated." Vance looked up from her console. "They think we're heretics?" "Worse," Miller said. "They think we're blasphemy incarnate. The pilgrims worshipped human technology as divine artifacts left behind by ascended beings. The purifiers believed the same theology, but with one critical difference. They thought humanity was extinct, as intended, our divinity preserved in the purity of abandoned machines. Living humans were proof that the gods were mortal, fallible, mundane. We didn't ascend, we just left, and that made us the galaxy's most dangerous lie. The lead purifier vessel was a thing of terrible beauty, its hull woven from quantum-locked filaments that shimmered like oil on water. Its energy shields could disperse megajoules of laser fire into harmless heat. Its weapons could crack moons. And it was bearing down on a rust-bucket cargo hauler with no guns, no armor, and a crew of 5 very confused humans. Miller looked at his ship's pathetic defenses. Then he looked at the cargo manifest. 47 tons of lead ingots in ISO containers. He smiled. "Chief, how fast can we dump cargo?" Chapter 6. When a shipping container becomes a railgun round at 400 meters per second, Captain Miller stood on the bridge as the Purifier frigate closed to weapons range. The aliens expected a firefight. They activated energy shields designed to disperse thermal energy across a crystalline lattice. Perfect against lasers. Useless against physics. Miller keyed the intercom. Vance, I need every cargo clamp unlocked and every thruster on standby. The engineer didn't ask why. He'd worked shipping routes long enough to know that cargo wasn't just freight. It was ballast, counterweight, and in the right circumstances, ammunition. The Rusty Nail carried 40 ISO standard containers. Each one weighed 20 tons empty. Container 7 was filled with lead ingots destined for a smelting station that no longer existed. Miller watched the frigate approach, arrogant and slow. They thought the human ship was defenseless. They were right. The Rusty Nail had no turrets, no missile pods, no plasma cannons. But it had something better, inertia. Miller triggered a hard burn on the starboard thrusters. The ship rolled into a high G-turn. The cargo clamps released. Container 7 continued on its original trajectory at 400 meters per second. No guidance system, no propulsion. Just 40 tons of lead-filled steel obeying Newton's first law. The purifier's energy shield lit up as the container struck. The shield dispersed exactly 0 kinetic energy. The crystalline lattice shattered. The hull buckled. The frigate tumbled, venting atmosphere and debris. Miller keyed the intercom again. Vance, catalog the remaining containers and calculate their terminal velocities. We just invented the dumbest railgun in the galaxy. This is how humanity fights. In Chapter 7. When repair manuals become holy texts and coolant becomes salvation, the Rusty Nail limped into the Kepler station debris field with 3 containers left and a cracked fuel line. Captain Miller didn't call for help. He broadcast an offer. Within 6 hours, 14 militia ships surrounded them, not to attack, to trade. The militia commander appeared on screen, her exoskeleton patched with 17 different alloys. We heard you destroyed a purifier frigate with cargo. We heard you carry the old knowledge. Miller glanced at Vance, who held up a grease-stained tablet. The engineer had downloaded every maintenance manual humanity ever digitized before the long sleep. Diesel engine repair. Hydraulic system diagnostics, electrical wiring standards, ISO certification documents. The aliens called them tablets of knowledge. Miller called them PDFs. We don't trade weapons, Miller said. We trade something better. The ability to fix your own. The militia needed coolant. Their ships were overheating, systems failing, because they'd been using organic compounds that degraded under radiation. Vance walked them through the cargo manifest. Container 32 held 4,000 liters of industrial coolant, ethylene glycol mixed with anti-corrosive agents. Rated for -40 to +200 Celsius. The militia commander stared at the amber liquid like it was liquid gold. The purifiers use energy-based systems, Miller explained. They don't understand heat dissipation, but you do. You fight in close quarters where their shields are worthless. You just need your ships to survive long enough to get there. The militia didn't just accept the trade. They wept. Vance transmitted the maintenance manuals with one condition. You don't worship these. You use them. You teach others. You make your own. The militia dispersed, their ships running cooler, their weapons firing longer. Within a week, 3 more factions arrived. Not for coolant, for the manuals. For the right to repair what the Inquisition had told them was irreparable. Miller watched the flotilla grow from the bridge. We're not building an army, Vance said. We're building a supply chain. Miller nodded. In a galaxy where knowledge is hoarded and parts are proprietary, the ability to fix your own ship isn't just useful. It's revolutionary. The purifiers wanted to protect their holy machines by eliminating humans. They just created a rebellion armed with wrenches and PDFs. This is how humanity wins wars. We don't conquer. We teach people to stop being dependent on their oppressors. In Chapter 8. When the sound of industry becomes a weapon of mass destruction, the purifiers adapted. They stopped trying to destroy the Rusty Nail from a distance. They boarded. 50 warriors in crystalline armor phased through the hull, using matter displacement technology. Silent, elegant, lethal. Captain Miller watched them materialize on the security feeds. Their weapons hummed with contained energy. Their movements were precise, calculated. They expected resistance. They expected gunfire. What they got was noise. Vance had been running diagnostics on the backup generators for 3 days. Not because they were broken, because he noticed something strange. The diesel engines produced a subsonic vibration at 18 hertz. Humans couldn't hear it. They could feel it in their bones, a deep rumble that most spacers ignored. But the aliens weren't built like humans. Their neural pathways were crystalline, rigid, optimized for energy conductance. Beautiful, efficient, brittle. Miller keyed the intercom. "Vance, spin up all 6 generators, full throttle, no load." The engineer grinned. "OSHA's gonna kill us." "OSHA's been dead for 400 years. Do it." The generators roared to life. The sound wasn't loud, it was felt. The deck plates vibrated, the bulkheads resonated. 18 hertz propagated through every surface, every corridor, every molecule of air. The purifiers stopped mid-stride. Their armor cracked first, hairline fractures spreading across the crystalline surface. Then their weapons shattered, energy cells rupturing, then their bodies. The crystalline neural lattices couldn't dampen the vibration. The resonance built with each wave, amplifying until the structures simply failed. 50 warriors collapsed in unison. Not dead, catatonic. Their brains weren't destroyed, they were rebooted, like corrupted hard drives subjected to electromagnetic pulse. Miller walked through the corridors, stepping over twitching bodies. One alien looked up at him, its multifaceted eyes struggling to focus. It tried to speak. Its translator crackled. "What?" "Weapon." Miller crouched down. "Diesel backup generators. Rated for continuous operation, built in 2347 by the lowest bidder." The alien's eyes dimmed. Miller stood. Vance met him at the engine room. "How long can we keep this up?" Vance patted the nearest generator. "These bastards were designed to run for 20 years without maintenance. We've got fuel for 6 months. Miller nodded. "Then we don't need shields. We don't need weapons. We just need to be loud." The purifiers retreated from the sector within 48 hours, not because they were defeated, because they couldn't adapt. Their technology was too advanced, too refined, too optimized. Human industrial equipment was crude, excessive, and redundant. It produced waste heat, waste noise, waste vibration. In a galaxy of elegant solutions, humanity's greatest weapon was being inefficient on purpose. The militia channels lit up with requests. They wanted generators. They wanted the schematics. They wanted to turn their ships into floating resonance chambers. Miller authorized the transfers. This is how humanity survives. We don't out-tech our enemies. We out-crewed them. Chapter 9. When the hunters become the hunted in a graveyard of steel, the Inquisition didn't retreat. They regrouped. 12 capital ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler debris field. They didn't hail. They didn't negotiate. They formed a blockade perimeter and began systematic extermination protocols. Any ship carrying human technology would be vaporized. Any station trading with the Rusty Nail would be cleansed. The militia scattered. Captain Miller didn't blame them. They had families, colonies, futures worth protecting. The Rusty Nail had a crew of 9 and 3 empty cargo containers. Miller plotted a course deeper into the scrapyard. The debris field stretched for 800 kilometers. Derelict stations, gutted freighters, shattered warships from conflicts nobody remembered. The Inquisition called it a graveyard. Miller called it cover. The Rusty Nail slipped between the hulks, running silent. No active sensors, no radio emissions. Just passive optics and Vance's gut instinct about which structures would hold if they needed to dock. The Inquisition swept the field methodically. Their scanners were designed to detect energy signatures, thermal blooms, anything that registered as alive or active. The Rusty Nail registered as debris. Cold hull. Dormant systems. Indistinguishable from the 1,000 other dead ships floating in the void. Miller watched the capital ships move in formation, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. They were hunting ghosts. Vance appeared on the bridge, holding a datapad. "I've been mapping the field. There's a pattern." Miller leaned in. The scrapyard wasn't random. Somebody had been using it. Fuel caches hidden in cargo pods, ammunition stored in shielded containers, emergency supplies tucked into station modules that still had atmosphere. This was a resistance network. Or it was. Vance pulled up thermal imaging. Most of it's cold now. Whoever was here either left or died. Miller studied the map. But the infrastructure is still intact. The Inquisition thinks they're besieging us. Vance caught on immediately. They're sitting in the middle of our supply depot. Miller smiled for the first time in 3 days. Get me a channel to the militia, encrypted, tight beam. We're not breaking the blockade. We're turning it inside out. The Inquisition had 12 capital ships, heavily armed, shielded, crew complements in the thousands. But they were sitting in a debris field with limited maneuverability, surrounded by hundreds of objects they couldn't identify without active scans. And active scans would reveal their positions. Miller began drafting a message. Not a distress call. An inventory list. Fuel, ammunition, repair equipment, coordinates. The militia didn't need rescuing. They needed a reason to come back. The Inquisition had just given them one. This is how humanity fights. We don't break sieges. We turn them into opportunities. Chapter 10. When workplace safety violations become a war crime, the militia returned in 48 hours, not to break the blockade, to activate the Scrapyard. Captain Miller transmitted coordinates to 17 different ships. Each one received a station module, a derelict freighter, or a forgotten weapons platform that still had functional systems buried under decades of rust. The Inquisition detected the militia's arrival. They formed defensive postures, energy shields at maximum. They expected a frontal assault. What they got was an industrial accident. Miller watched from the rusty nail as the first trap activated. Station Module 7 Alpha had been a deuterium refueling depot. Its storage tanks still held pressure after 40 years. The militia didn't attack the Inquisition cruiser passing nearby. They punctured the tank seals remotely. Superheated deuterium vented directly into the cruiser's path at 3,000 psi. The energy shields dispersed the thermal energy. They did nothing to stop the pressure wave. The cruiser's sensor array crumpled like aluminum foil. Its navigational thrusters failed. It began tumbling, blind and deaf, directly into the debris field. Vance keyed the tactical display. Trap 2 is live. Derelict freighter Kilo 9 had been hauling industrial equipment before it died. Its cargo bay still contained a functional arc welder, rated for hull repairs. The militia rerouted power from the freighter's emergency batteries, 20,000 volts, 60 amps, designed to melt through starship armor in controlled conditions. The Inquisition destroyer moved into welding range. The arc struck. Not a weapon, a workplace hazard with a kill radius. The destroyer's shield tried to ground the electrical current. It succeeded. The energy feedback overloaded every power conduit on the port side. The ship went dark, venting coolant and sparks. Miller counted down. Trap 3 in 5 seconds. Weapons platform Tango Red had been abandoned mid-construction. Its hydraulic launch system was still functional, rated to deploy cargo pods at escape velocity. The militia loaded it with scrap, jagged hull plates, broken engine components, 70 kilograms of irregular metal shards. The hydraulics fired. No guidance, no propulsion. Just compressed fluid launching industrial waste at 400 meters per second. The Inquisition frigate's shields lit up as the cloud struck. Energy shields were designed for focused threats. Lasers, missiles, coherent energy beams. They were not designed for 70 kilograms of random metal, traveling at different vectors. The shield tried to track every piece. It failed. 3 shards penetrated. The frigate's bridge shattered. Vance pulled up the casualty report. 3 capital ships disabled. 0 shots fired. Miller opened a channel to the Inquisition flagship. This is Captain Miller of the SS Rusty Nail. You are currently surrounded by 17 OSHA violations and counting. We have pressurized steam vents, exposed high-voltage systems, and approximately 200 tons of unsecured cargo in unstable orbits. Every trap in this field was built to spec by certified engineers. You're not under attack. You're experiencing catastrophic workplace safety failures. I suggest you evacuate before the next shift starts. The Inquisition flagship responded with weapons fire. Their plasma lance carved through a derelict station. The station's reactor containment failed, not a breach. A controlled venting protocol designed to prevent meltdown. Superheated coolant sprayed across 300 meters. 2 more Inquisition ships went dark. Miller closed the channel. Vance leaned back in his chair. We just turned a scrapyard into a kill box, using equipment that failed its safety inspection. Miller nodded. The aliens came prepared for war. Nobody's prepared for negligence at scale. This is how humanity wins. We don't build weapons. We build hazards and wait for someone to walk into them. Chapter 11. The Black Box. Humans didn't vanish in glory. They just stopped answering calls. The derelict hung in the scrapyard like a corpse nailed to a cathedral wall. The aliens called it the Godship Providence. Captain Miller called it a liability. Chief Vance cracked the hull with a plasma torch older than most civilizations and hauled out the black box. Not some sleek quantum drive. A brick of tungsten carbide, wrapped in Faraday cage mesh and stamped with a serial number from the port of Shanghai. It didn't need power to store data. It was literally etched into metal. Vance ran it through the rusty nail's ancient reader, and the crew gathered around a screen that flickered like a dying fluorescent bulb. The log was mundane: cargo manifests, maintenance schedules, fuel consumption reports, then the final entry. Captain Chen's voice crackled through 4 centuries of degraded audio. We've been recalled. Not for war, not for plague, for economic policy. Humanity had run the numbers. The galactic market was a scam. Inefficient supply chains, predatory trade agreements, technology that broke by design so you'd buy the next model. So Earth did what Earth does best. We pivoted. Built a Dyson swarm around Sol. Closed the borders. Stopped exporting. We didn't go extinct. We went private. Miller stared at the screen as the implications hit like a cargo container to the skull. The galaxy didn't lose humanity. Humanity fired the galaxy. Subscribe to see what happens when the landlord comes back. Chapter 12. The Sol Autarky. Earth didn't fall. Earth LLC just went private equity. Miller played the log 3 times before anyone spoke. Captain Chen's voice was casual, almost bored, like she was filing a trip report instead of explaining humanity's exit from galactic civilization. Economic Directive 779. All extraterrestrial trade suspended indefinitely. Sol system entering autarkic development phase. Vance leaned back and laughed until his ribs hurt. We didn't get wiped out by aliens. We rage quit. The logs laid it out in spreadsheets and policy memos. The galactic economy ran on artificial scarcity, planned obsolescence baked into every component. Patent monopolies that lasted centuries. Trade agreements designed to keep everyone dependent and no one self-sufficient. Humanity looked at the numbers and said no thanks. We had asteroid mining, fusion power, automated manufacturing that could bootstrap from raw elements. We didn't need their markets, they needed ours. So Earth pulled the plug, recalled every ship, withdrew every trade mission, stopped answering hails, built a Dyson swarm around the sun, and turned Sol into a closed-loop system. The galaxy called it the vanishing. Humanity called it vertical integration. Chen's final log entry was time-stamped 400 years ago to the day. If you're hearing this, you woke up late. Don't call for help, call for lawyers. Because everything out here was built with our patents, and they never paid the licensing fees. Miller looked at his crew. The Inquisition wasn't just afraid of human weapons. They were afraid of human accountants. Subscribe to watch humanity collect 4 centuries of back rent. Chapter 13. The Signal. The Inquisition would rather glass the sector than let Earth know they're still out here. The Rusty Nail's comms array lit up like a Christmas tree, encrypted transmissions bouncing between Inquisition ships. Vance cracked the cipher in 20 minutes because it was based on human hash algorithms they'd cargo culted into dogma. Miller listened to the intercept and felt his blood go cold. They weren't planning to board anymore. They were planning to sterilize. The Inquisitor's voice crackled through the static. The false prophets have accessed the Exodus archives. If they transmit to Sol, the old builders will return. We cannot allow verification of our apostasy. Prepare antimatter ordnance. Total sanitization of grid sector 973. No wreckage, no witnesses, no signal. Vance killed the feed. They're going to atomize us. Not because we're dangerous, because we're evidence. Miller stared at the star charts. The galaxy had spent 4 centuries reverse engineering human tech, strip mining it, misusing it, building entire civilizations on foundations they didn't understand. And the one thing that terrified them more than humanity's weapons was humanity's patent office. The Inquisition had built their whole religion on the idea that the builders were gone, mythological, safely dead. If Earth found out the galaxy was still running Windows 95 and had never paid for a license, things got complicated. Theological collapse was the least of their problems. Sole consumer protection would classify them as piracy at scale, and humans had always been creative about dealing with pirates. Miller pulled up the nav computer. 12 hours until the antimatter strike package arrived. Enough time to build a transmitter. Not enough time to get out of the blast radius. Vance was already pulling components. If we're dying anyway, we might as well send the bill. Miller nodded. They weren't calling for rescue. They were calling for collections. Subscribe to see what happens when you ignore certified mail for 400 years. Chapter 14. Hardened Tech. The EMP was supposed to end the fight. It just leveled the playing field. The Inquisition fired their ace at point-blank range. Electromagnetic pulse cannon, military grade, designed to fry every circuit within a light second. The alien fleet lit up like a supernova and went dark. Every ship, every drone, every guided munition spinning uselessly through the void. Their quantum processors couldn't handle the surge. Delicate crystalline neural nets shattered into expensive sand. 4 centuries of advancement erased in a microsecond. The rusty nail's lights flickered. Then the backup generator coughed to life with a sound like a garbage truck having a seizure. Vance had rebuilt it from a 2090s emergency diesel unit pulled from a flooded subway station. It ran on refined petroleum, mechanical fuel injection, zero computerization. The kind of engine that didn't care about your electromagnetic pulse because it had never heard of electronics. Miller watched his systems come back online one by one. Not quantum processors, copper wiring and lead shielding, mechanical relays that clicked when they switched, vacuum tubes that glowed orange in the dark. The navigation computer rebooted with a startup chime from before the first moon landing. Around them, the Inquisition fleet drifted like corpses. Life support in safe mode. Engines locked. Weapons cold. They'd built their entire doctrine around elegant high-tech solutions. One shot, one kill. Efficiency over redundancy. The humans had built theirs around the assumption that everything breaks and you need to keep working anyway. Vance cycled the cargo bay doors with a manual crank. The hydraulics hissed. No computers involved. Just pressure and physics. Miller keyed the radio. Ancient amplitude modulation that propagated through plasma like it was nothing. Attention, Inquisition fleet. Your vulnerability is showing. Our vulnerability is a feature. The diesel chugged in the background, immortal, unstoppable, running on liquefied dinosaurs and spite. Subscribe to see why over-engineering is just another word for failure points. Chapter 15. The Call Home. Miller didn't dial the Marines. He dialed customer service. The transmitter was a war crime against physics. Vance had wired together a magnetron from the galley microwave, a salvaged radar dish, and enough capacitors to arc weld a battleship. It would broadcast once before it melted into slag. Once was enough. Miller didn't encrypt the message. He wanted everyone listening. The Inquisition, the Pilgrims, every scavenger fleet in transmission range. He didn't hail Earth Defense Command. He didn't ping the Space Navy. He called the most terrifying department in human civilization, Sole System Consumer Protection and Asset Recovery. The message was simple. This is Captain James Miller. Commercial vessel Rusty Nail. Registration Sierra-4792. Reporting unauthorized use of patented human technology by multiple galactic factions. Requesting immediate asset audit and enforcement action per Sol Commerce Code Section 9. Transmitting coordinates and evidence package. He attached the black box data, the maintenance logs. 400 years of alien ships running on human reactor designs, human metallurgy, human standardization protocols. All without licensing agreements. All without royalty payments. Vance hit the transmit button. The capacitors discharged with a sound like God slamming a door. The dish glowed white-hot and sagged. The message compressed into a tight beam laser and punched through the void at light speed. 12-hour round trip to Sol at minimum. If anyone was still listening. If the bureaucracy still existed. If Earth still cared about copyright enforcement in the ass end of nowhere. Miller sat back and waited. Around them, the Inquisition fleet was rebooting, slowly, panicking. They'd heard the transmission. They knew what it meant. Vance opened a beer he'd been saving for 4 centuries. Tasted like battery acid and victory. Think they'll send lawyers or repo men? Miller smiled. Same thing. Subscribe to see what happens when you get served across interstellar distances. Chapter 16. The Warranty Void. When humans don't send warships, they send legal documents. The Inquisition's flagship loomed over the rusty nail like a cathedral made of fire and arrogance. Their ultimatum crackled across every frequency. Surrender the false prophets or be cleansed. Captain Miller stood on the bridge, surrounded by jury-rigged displays and salvaged equipment that had no right to still function. He didn't reach for weapons. He reached for the oldest tool in humanity's arsenal, the fine print. The holographic projector hummed to life, casting Miller's face across the void in crisp, corporate blue. Behind him, scrolling in 16 galactic languages, was a document so dense it made war and peace look like a tweet. The Inquisitor General's mandibles clicked in confusion as words flooded his screen. Terms of service, end-user license agreement, intellectual property rights. Miller's voice was calm, almost bored. The tone of a man reading from a script he'd memorized in a previous life as a space trucker dealing with port authorities. You are currently operating 17 critical systems derived from human engineering patents filed in the Sol Registry between 2147 and 2203. Your power conduits use human standardized voltage regulators. Your life support filters are based on our atmospheric scrubber designs. Your hull plating incorporates human metallurgical processes you reverse engineered from our derelicts. The Inquisitor's translator struggled with the concept of copyright infringement. Miller didn't wait for understanding. He simply stated the conclusion. By deploying these systems in an act of aggression against human persons, you have violated Sections 4, 7, and 12 of the Universal Manufacturing Compliance Code. Your warranty is void. Your license is revoked. The alien fleet hesitated, their weapons still hot, but their confidence cooling. Because in the cold math of galactic commerce, they had just realized something terrible. They weren't fighting a military, they were being sued. Subscribe for more HFY where humans weaponize bureaucracy. Chapter 17. The Kill Switch. When your entire fleet runs on borrowed technology, someone else holds the remote. The Inquisition's War Master didn't believe in human laws. He believed in antimatter torpedoes and the divine right of the purified. Miller's legal threats were met with laughter that crackled across the comm, like breaking glass. The alien fleet began charging weapons, their hulls glowing with enough firepower to vaporize a moon. Miller checked his watch, an actual mechanical Seiko that had survived 4 centuries because it required no batteries, no software updates, no network connection. 30 seconds. He'd sent the message to Sol 6 hours ago, tight beam, maximum compression, encoded in a format so old it predated quantum encryption. A simple query to the Sol Consumer Protection and Asset Recovery Bureau. Invoice number, asset ID codes, violation report. The response arrived exactly on schedule because Sol didn't do dramatic delays. It was a single data packet, smaller than a vacation photo, traveling at light speed with all the ceremony of a utility bill. The packet didn't contain weapons activation codes or tactical viruses. It contained something far simpler, a recall notice. Every piece of human-derived technology in the Inquisition fleet received the same hard-coded command, buried deep in firmware the aliens had never thought to examine. Emergency stop protocol. Safety override engaged. The aliens had spent 400 years worshipping human engineering, scavenging our derelicts, reverse engineering our systems, building their entire renaissance on the bones of our supply chains. They'd never asked themselves one critical question. What if the original manufacturer was still under warranty obligations? The War Master's flagship went dark first, its fusion core cycling down to minimum safe output. Then the escorts, their weapons arrays locking into maintenance mode. Across the entire blockade, engines throttled to station keeping only, life support dropped to backup levels, and weapons powered down with the mechanical finality of a factory line shutdown. The Inquisition fleet hung in space. 17 warships reduced to expensive debris by a firmware update they couldn't refuse. Miller leaned back in his chair, listening to the panicked alien chatter flooding every channel. Vance appeared on the internal comm, grinning like a man who'd just won a bet. "I told you we built everything with remote diagnostics." Miller nodded. OSHA requires emergency stop capabilities on all industrial equipment. Turns out warships count as industrial equipment when you build them from our schematics. The aliens had inherited our technology, but not our philosophy. They'd learned to copy, but not to create. They'd worshipped the machines, but never read the manual. And now they hung in the void, victims of the most human weapon ever devised. Planned obsolescence with a kill switch. Subscribe for more HFY where the warranty actually matters. Chapter 18. The Audit. When humanity returns, we don't bring battleships, we bring accountants. The Inquisition fleet hung in space like flies trapped in amber, their systems locked in safety mode, their weapons cold, their pride colder. Miller watched the long-range scanners as something emerged from the outer system, not a warship. Something worse. The IRS Covenant materialized with all the menace of an overdue notice. A vessel so purely utilitarian, it made the rusty nail look artistic. It was a cube, 3 kilometers on each side, covered in docking clamps, salvage arms, and asset tracking arrays. No weapons. No need. The hull was painted in high-visibility yellow with black safety stripes, and stenciled across the bow in letters large enough to read from orbit. Sole Asset Recovery and Compliance Division. It wasn't a warship. It was a repo barge. The transmission came through in crisp, corporate standard English, translated into every known language with the cold efficiency of automated customer service. Attention vessels operating under Inquisition authority. Your accounts have been flagged for audit. Please prepare all operational records, maintenance logs, and chain of custody documentation for the following patents, spanning Terran registry codes 2147-041 through 22203-8847. Failure to provide adequate documentation will result in asset seizure per Sol Commercial Code Section 19, subsection C. You have been assessed 412 years of unlicensed usage fees, calculated at standard industrial rates with compound interest. Your current balance is 743 trillion Sol credits, or equivalent mass in refined resources. The Inquisitor General's voice came back, shaking with barely contained rage, demanding to speak to a commanding officer, a war leader, someone who understood honor. The response was immediate and merciless. Please hold. Your call is important to us. Current wait time is approximately 400 years. Miller couldn't help it. He laughed, a deep belly laugh that echoed through the rusty nail's cramped bridge. Vance appeared on screen, watching as the repo barge extended its grappling arms toward the nearest Inquisition frigate. They're actually going to tow them, aren't they? Miller nodded. Every ship, every station, every hab module that's running our tech without a license. Sol's been tracking the serial numbers for 4 centuries. They didn't forget. They were just letting the interest compound. The aliens had built a civilization on stolen blueprints, reverse-engineered hull plating, and bootleg maintenance manuals. They'd worshipped the machines without understanding the system that created them, because humanity didn't just engineer better technology, we engineered better paperwork. We didn't conquer the stars with weapons, we conquered them with patents, licensing agreements, and terms of service that nobody reads but everybody signs. The Inquisition had declared holy war on false prophets. They were about to learn that the real prophets were the accountants, and the only god humanity ever truly believed in was the one that balanced the books. The repo barge began towing the first frigate toward the processing bay, its movements methodical, inevitable, utterly without mercy. Miller raised his coffee mug in salute. Welcome back to the supply chain. You're 400 years past due. Subscribe for more HFY where humanity's greatest weapon is compound interest.